listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for letting us be part of your day. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting beside me is the recently repaired Myra.
Hi, everyone.
Just a couple of weeks now from her shoulder surgery and doing better. Had your stitches out last week, and that looks good. Also, the tape they put over where they took your stitches out, one of those spots came off today, and hardly any scarring at all. So, kudos to the
Person that
closed you up. Yeah, looking good. Today we're going to look at something, I don't want to say lighthearted, but I'm going to look at this in a way that might be different than anything you've ever heard before. So kind of bear with us as we look into some superstitions and where it comes from and why it's there. Let me remind all the new visitors, if you are new, we do have the website, givegod90.com. If you want to go there, check out the video page especially. There's some videos there you might be interested in. The first 3 pages on there is the Give God 90. I don't really think it's a challenge as much as it is a way to improve your life. There's no goals other than, if you do things the way you are designed to live and the way the Almighty tells you to do them, the end of 90 days, your life should be improved. You're not going to be a multimillionaire by chance. I'm not promising that at all. But, you should see some improvement depending on how much effort you put in it. Of course, that's all completely based on you as well. So a lot of times, I get some people asking, well, you shouldn't test God like that. Well, it's not testing God if you're the one that's changing your life to match the way He designed you to live, right?
Right.
So if you're the one following His instructions, that's not a challenge for Him. That's a challenge for you. I mean, that's just simple, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you want more detail than what's there, of course, there's Traditions of Truth, One Man's Search for Honest Answers, and God's Universe, God's Rules. All of those available wherever fine books are sold, but I would suggest you check out a local bookstore and see if they can acquire that for you. Also, if you like what you hear today, don't forget those like buttons and share buttons. Whatever podcast outlet you're listening on, give us a review, 5 stars if possible, 10 if they got them, right? And then go ahead and follow it, because that's how people who have podcasts actually create and build a larger audience. They see other people, and they don't even have to know you. They just see how many people follow it. It's like, oh, this must be doing something. So they kind of tag along and see what it's all about. If it's for them, then they can, keep listening and follow it. If not, then they can go on to the next one. That's fine too. It's all up to you. When I started thinking about this, I realized that we were going to be doing this podcast with Superstitions just a couple of days after the opening day for American baseball. Right? And I know I have a lot of people listening in other countries who may or may not follow baseball, and that's okay. That's about all I'm going to say about it. Other than to say there's a lot of superstitions that people have about sports teams. And it doesn't have to be just baseball. It has to do with hockey and soccer and even the dart leagues that some folks follow in some countries. There's a lot of superstitions. Some people think that their favorite sports team will win if they wear a special shirt or if they don't take a bath or take a shower on game day. some people say, well, if I where's my lucky socks? I got to have my lucky socks so my team will win. Other people say, well, you know what? If the game starts at 6:30 in the afternoon, they won the last time I had my first beer at 5:30. So I've got to make sure that I open that beer at 5:30. Whether I drink it or not, I got to open it, right? Because that's their superstition. That's their good luck charm, so to speak. You kind of get the idea where I'm going with that, right? People equate things that they do with the outcome of something that they really don't have any input in, right? Because let's face it, if your baseball team or your soccer team is playing a game 1,000 miles away or, even an hour away, do they know what color shirt you're wearing? Probably not, right? So does it really matter? Are you that in tune with the karma of the universe, let's say for a moment, that because you wear a certain shirt, your favorite sports team is going to win? Something to think about, isn't it?
You better be careful.
Why should I be careful?
Stepping on toes.
Well, I'm going to be dancing on them here in a few minutes. It's all right. The regular listeners know I take no prisoners. It's just that simple. Now, you and I have seen other silly superstitions that are just as strange. You got to hold your breath when you go over a bridge or you cross a railroad track. Some people, when they're riding in a car, if they cross over a bridge or a railroad track, they pick their feet up off the floorboard. Other people, if they go past a graveyard, have to hold their breath. Well, that's kind of understandable, though. There is, and I'm not saying this is right, I'm saying it's understandable where the old theory comes from, because at a graveyard, they equate that with spirits living there, right? So, if you hold your breath, right, no spirit from the graveyard
enter.
Can get into you, right?
Right.
That's the theory. It's totally bogus. It's totally fraudulent, but that's the theory. And it's kind of understandable where somebody who doesn't know any better might come up with that. But that's okay. Other times people think, well, that black cat crossed my path. Oh, it's terrible. Some people are terrified of certain days. March 13th, Friday the 13th. We can look and we can trace these things back to why people don't like Friday the 13th. You ever heard, beware of the Ides of March, March 15th, the day that Caesar was killed, right? Et tu, Bertie, as that famous Shakespeare line goes. There's things like walking under a ladder. You don't step on the crack in the sidewalk. It's amazing how these things come about. We just have so many superstitions. People carry a rabbit's foot in their pocket. People have certain things that they do as they go in and out of a house. If you go into a house, you're always supposed to go into a house on your right foot, right? Or is that out of your house on the right foot or get out of bed on your right foot so you start the day off right?
I don't know.
There's all kinds of things that we do. The English word superstitious, here is some interesting etymology here when it comes to word origins. Our English word superstitious comes from the end of the 12th or the beginning of the 13th century from the Latin word, and I believe this is a compound Latin word, superstitionum. It's amazing, isn't it, how I can actually say that when it's spelled out there. Now, that actually comes from a different Latin word, superstitio, which means to prophesy or soothsaying. It's dread of the supernatural, excessive fear of gods with a little g. But it's actually the actual definition. Are you ready for this? The English word superstitious comes from the Latin word meaning false religious belief or irrational faith in supernatural powers. Isn't that amazing? Now, of course, the Latin, that's there, that's great. But we have a Greek word that's actually found in the Bible, and it is, I'm going to ruin the pronunciation on this. Daimona. Don't quote me on that, okay? If you're keeping score, it's the Strong's Greek number 1175, okay? And it means actually religion in general, but in a bad sense, supposedly, or superstition. Now, we can think of being superstitious as being religious because some people kind of treat it that way, right? Mm-hmm. They do things the same way over and over and over again. It kind of is their religion. And that just sort of, man, when we think about these things, it's like almost an alternate belief system. Isn't that amazing? How can that be? Well, it's easy. The place that superstitious is used in the King James, there's only one place, it's Acts 25:19, and it occurs where Festus is speaking about the Pharisees. And he says, certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. Now, what Festus is speaking about is the Jewish faith, right? And he calls it a superstition. Because coming from his pagan beliefs, he did not believe in the creator of the universe, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He believed in several other gods with the little g. So from his point of view, he's using the word superstitious and he's applying that to the religion of Judaism. How about that? So the way it's actually used in the Bible is actually applied to the Jews. Now, not many people are going to stop and think about that as they're reading Acts chapter 25, are they? Because most people, when they get that far into Acts, are going to say, isn't this book over yet? Right? Be honest. Be honest. I know how some folks are. But the thing we want to look at is that other translations use this word differently. Some use superstition, some use actually religion, some use system of beliefs. And many people who are superstitious are religious about their superstitions. Right? It's how they do many things. How many people do you know that keep some type of a token or a charm or, like I said, a rabbit's foot in their pocket? Maybe it's sitting on a shelf. Maybe they keep something in their car. In the United States, you ride around, you walk through parking lots, you look at the rear view mirror that's on the windows, front windshield of people's cars. So again, you see things hanging. You see crystals hanging sometimes from them. You see other things hanging. A lot of times, those are actually hung up there because of superstitions. Some people hang superstitious jewelry around their neck, or they put it on a finger, or do other things with jewelry. Stick it in their ear, or their belly button, or their whatever you call it. They get body piercings, and it's actually because of some of those things. The designs of them actually are. I don't want to say idol worship right there, but they contain on them, they have drawn on them certain pagan symbols. Now, it's interesting also that the the instructions that we get from the Almighty contain a lot of times, don't do these things that you're going to see the other nations do. Now, Moses was well aware when the mixed multitude came out of Egypt that the people had been watching, right? They'd been watching what's been going on. And they would still be superstitious. You know, even after they heard and saw the voice of the Creator. Exodus 22:18 reads that anyone who tries sorcery or witchcraft must be killed. It was that serious. The priests and prophets in Egypt, they are typically referred to in many translations as magicians. You know that the people who came out of Egypt had many, many years to watch these people work. They watched them as they practiced their spells. They watched them as they recited their incantations. You know, it was almost predictable that they weren't going to be able to abandon what they had seen from their past, even with what they were currently experiencing. You know, there's a lot of times people go back to what they think should be comfortable, right? How many times have we seen people, they start to come out of a bad relationship and you think they're doing good, and the next thing you know, where are they at? Right back in the same bad relationship, right? Because they're familiar with it. They knew it. They understood it. It was scary out there somewhere else. And that's kind of what happened to some of the folks that were begging Aaron to make those gods, right? When Aaron said, well, I don't really want to. Aaron, you got to do this. Well, if you'll give me the earrings from your wives and children, I'll see what I can do. I'm paraphrasing, okay? But that's the way that kind of played out, right? It was because they were afraid of what was in front of them, but they knew what was behind them. The warnings we have in those 5 books of Moses, not to do the things from the other nations, there's a reason for that. Those things that these other nations were doing have a foundation in their pagan superstitions, their pagan religions. Unfortunately, the children of Abraham, they did learn the ways, right? And they did do the things that the other nations did. And there are some examples we find. Myra's going to read 1 Samuel 28, 4 through 15. And this is interesting because of who is doing it.
The Philistines came together and made camp at Sharim. Saul gathered all the Israelites and made camp at Gilboa. When he saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. His heart pounded with fear. He prayed to the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him through dreams, Urim, or prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium. I'll go and ask her what will happen." His servants answered, "There is a medium in Endor." Then Saul put on other clothes so no one would know who he was. At night, Saul and 2 of his men went to see the woman. Saul said to her, "Talk to a spirit for me. Call up the person I name." But the woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done. He has forced the mediums and fortune tellers out of the land of Israel. You are trying to trap me and kill me." Saul made a promise to the woman in the name of the Lord. He said, "As surely as the Lord lives, you won't be punished for doing this." The woman asked, "Whom do you want me to bring up for you?" He answered, "Bring up Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed loudly. She said, "Why have you tricked me? You are Saul." The king said to the woman, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" The woman said, I see a spirit coming out of the ground. Saul asked, What does he look like? The woman answered, An old man wearing a coat is coming. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed face down on the ground. Samuel asked Saul, Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Saul answered, I'm greatly troubled. The Philistines are fighting against me. God has left me. He won't answer me anymore, either by prophets or in dreams. That's why I called you. I want you to tell me what to do.
Okay. There's a whole lot going on there, isn't there?
There is.
The king of Israel, who should know better, not only wants to, he doesn't, he is so unsure of himself. And with good reason, right? Nobody's answering him. Nobody's telling him what direction to go. So what does he do? Instead of waiting for his answer, he instructs someone to violate his own rules, right? He says, go find me somebody, go find me somebody that can tell me what to do. And they say, well, there's a witch in Endor. Now, if Endor sounds familiar to some of the listeners who are my age or older, if you remember a television show, Bewitched with Elizabeth Montgomery, her mother's name on the show was Endora. Where do you think that name comes from? It comes from right here in this passage. The person who played that part did a really good job, but the name Endora comes from this witch from Endor. Now Saul goes to her, and he should know better. He's the king of Israel. He knew what he was getting himself into. Is it any wonder he was going to fail so badly? Not to me, it's not. We knew. I could have told. To be slightly facetious, Ray Charles could have seen this coming, right? I mean, seriously. For those who don't know, Ray Charles was a blind entertainer, and he sang and played the piano extremely well for a jazz musician. We spent 3 Thursdays going into a great deal of detail about unholy spirits and idols and how they're able to influence the physical world. But here is the king of Israel who is seeking out fortune tellers, violating everything that Moses wrote. Not just seeking out fortune tellers, but necromancers, people that talk to the dead, looking for people who can advise him, getting people to lie for him, getting people to, what didn't he do? He lied, he cheated, he had other people lie for him. He was just in a bad way. People talk about David. David got nothing on Saul, folks. Deuteronomy 18:10 reads that there shall not be found among you anyone that makes his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. When this was translated to English, divination was defined this way. And this comes from Webster's 1828. The act of divining, a foretelling future events or discovering things secret or obscure by the aid of superior beings or by other than human means. The ancient heathen philosophers divided divination into 2 kinds, natural and artificial. Natural divination was supposed to be effected by a kind of inspiration or divine afflatus, and artificial divination was affected by certain rites, experiments, or observations, or by sacrifices, cake, flour, wine, observation of entrails, flight of birds, casting lots, omens, or in position of the stars. Does that sound like zodiac? That's astrology, which is much different than astronomy. Astronomy is looking up and saying, well, that constellation we know is whatever it happens to be, and it's in this position this time of year. They use it to tell time. Astrology means I was born when this star did a certain thing in that particular constellation, and because of that, my life is guided by that. That you don't do. Astrology is you don't do. Astronomy is okay to do because it's just observation of a calendar. If you read translations and get confused, it's okay. Sometimes words that say one thing in one translation, they can be used a different way in a different translation. Sometimes they use a word in a certain way in one book or in one chapter, and it'll change later on. All right, and divination and witchcraft and enchanters and that sorcerers and that kind of thing, they kind of loosely flow as the translator felt like translating it. Did that make sense? So, the same Hebrew word may appear, and it's going to say sorcerer in one place, in a different part of the same translation, it may say witch, or in a totally different translation, it may be enchanted or enchantress. But it's all the same thing. So don't get confused by, one thing's witchcraft and one thing's being a sorcerer and one thing's, they're probably all the same thing. They're all bad. You need to avoid them all. So just bear that in mind. Now, in 2 Kings 17, we have a narrative that gives a great example of what happens when we allow pagan religions and superstitions to mix with our faith. Okay? Remember that Scripture calls these things bad, right? It says don't do them. But I need to set this up a little bit before Myra reads in 2 Kings 17. So here's what's going on. Okay, here's a little bit of background. Hoshea, who is the son of Elah, becomes king of Israel. And this is during Ahaz's 12th year as king of Judah. So remember, you have the two houses. You have Israel and you have Judah. Two different houses, two different kings. All right? Shalmaneser was the king of Assyria, and he came to attack Hoshea, who is the king of Israel. All right? Now, here's something that might sound a little funny. Hoshea had been Shalmaneser's servant long time prior to becoming king. All right? The king of Assyria came and attacked all the land of Israel, and he surrounded Samaria, and he attacked it, and he was going after it for 3 years. And he finally defeated Samaria in the 9th year that Hoshea was king. And he took the Israelites away. Now, as you read down further in chapter 17, we're going to get to verse 14. I was going to begin reading in verse 14 through verse 20, and you're going to see why and how this happened.
But the people would not listen. They were stubborn, just as their ancestors had been. Their ancestors did not believe in the Lord their God. They rejected the Lord's laws and the agreement he had made with their ancestors. And they refused to listen to his warnings. They worshipped useless idols and became useless themselves. They did what the nations did around them, and the Lord had warned them not to do this. The people disobeyed all the commandments of the Lord their God. They made statues of 2 calves from melted metal. They made an Asherah idol. They worshipped all the stars of heaven and served Baal. They sacrificed their sons and daughters in the fire. And they tried to find out the future by magic and witchcraft. They always chose to do what the Lord said was wrong. And this made him angry. So he was very angry with the people of Israel. He removed them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah was left. But even Judah did not obey the commands of the Lord their God. They did what the Israelites had done. So the Lord rejected all the people of Israel. He punished them and let the people destroy them. He threw them out of his presence.
Okay. We have the people of Israel. You have the two houses. Each one was doing things that they knew better than to do, but they still did them. Finally, the Almighty had had enough. He says, and I've had it. Enough is enough. So he takes someone who was a servant, he raises them up to be king, and then he takes the master to overtake the king, right? You got to see a little bit of satire in that, right? the servant, or the master, who is the king of I'm sorry. Yes, I got to get right in my head because I'm thinking three different kings here. The Hoshea, who had been a servant to Shalmaneser, who was king of Assyria. So Shalmaneser was the master. Hoshea was the servant. Now, once they're back in Israel, Hoshea is king. He's top dog. So who does the Almighty send to take care of the top dog? The old master. That's satire right there. That's God saying, you know what? I'm going to beat you at your own game. I'm going to let you paint yourself into this corner. And then, not only are you going to get wet paint feet on the way out, I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming through it. That's what's going on there. Why? Look at what they did. Everything they were told not to do. Everything they were told not to do. The people in Israel and in Judah, instead of practicing the I don't want to say religion here, but instead of doing the things that they were told to do, instead of following the instructions that they had from Moses, they looked around and they said, you know what? That nation over there, they got this really pretty Asherah pole thing. I bet we can adapt that, and I bet we can put lights on it in the future, and I bet we can do some other things too. God said, I don't like that. Right? They were bowing down to other false gods with the little g. They were doing things that were just bad. Okay? When it says they sacrificed their sons and daughters in fire, it's kind of hard to get much worse than that. The thing is, we can look at that example that Myra just read, and it's pretty obvious that it's bad luck to be superstitious, right? We have that example in those few verses. He says with his tongue in his cheek, kind of, right? Sarcastically. Absolutely. How many examples do we need to figure out that we need to follow the Creator's instructions and live the way we're designed to live? I don't know. It's up to you, right? What's it going to take for you to understand that that lucky rabbit's foot you have maybe in your pocket, on your keychain, well, it really wasn't lucky for the rabbit, right? He lost it. How many times, in the United States, there's another superstition. If you're walking around and you see a penny and it's heads up, it's okay to pick it up because that's good luck. But if it's the tail side up or the other side, you shouldn't pick it up because that's bad luck. Well, it's only bad luck from the person who lost it. Okay? If you find it and it's laying in the middle of a parking lot, nobody's around, a penny, nobody is going to argue with you if you pick it up and put it in your pocket. All right? It's just that simple. Even Yeshua and his disciples found a coin in a fish's mouth so that they could pay their taxes. Might be a little miraculous thing going on there, but you get where I'm coming from with that, right? You're lucky. Your favorite sports team wins when you wear your lucky shirt, when you wear your lucky socks. No, they didn't win because you wore your shirt or your lucky socks. They won because they outplayed the other team. They played harder. They played better. Maybe they trained more that week. Maybe they weren't feeling bad that week. Everything sometimes just comes together and it flows when a team is in stride. They're all looking for that win. They're all wanting and desiring to play the best game they can play. Right? That's why they win. It's not because you did something hundreds of miles or hours away. Now, walking under a ladder might not be very smart, especially if somebody's working, above you. They might drop something. That's not luck or unlucky. That's just stupid. If you're stupid enough to stand under a ladder, especially if it's a block layer laying block up on a ladder, and he drops a block or a trowel or mortar or something on your head, you deserve to have something dropped on your head. It's just that simple. It's not bad luck. It's not superstitious. It's just flat out, you're where you shouldn't be. The black cat that crosses the path in front of you, he's just not going where you're going. He's going a different way. That's all there is to it. Deuteronomy 23:9 actually reads, when the army, meaning heaven's army, goes out against your enemies, it keeps you from every wicked thing. When heaven's army goes out against your enemies, how are they going to know to go out against your enemies unless you're living the way you're designed to live? Romans chapter 8, Paul asks a good question. He says, if God's for us, who can be against us? That's nothing new. That concept is all through Scripture. 1 Kings 8:57, may the Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. May he never leave us or forsake us. 2 Kings 6:16, don't be afraid, Elisha answered, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Psalm 56:9, then my enemies will retreat on the day I cry for help. By this I will know that God is on my side. Psalm 118:6, the Lord's on my side, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Isaiah 8:10, devise a plan, but it will be thwarted. State a proposal, but it will not happen, for God is with us. Isaiah 41:10, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will surely help you. I will uphold you with my right hand of righteousness. How many more of these examples do you need? Have you figured it out yet? With the promises we have direct from the throne room of heaven, why would you continue to choose silly superstitions over living the way you're designed to live? Why would you want to keep a lucky idol or a lucky charm when we have the instructions that say, don't do that? Why would you want to keep that in your pocket? Why would you want to keep it on your keychain? Why would you want to keep it in your house? Why would you need to think that just because something has no, it's an inanimate object, right? Can the words you speak to it cause it to influence you and others? Yeah, it can. But it's not luck. It's either, well, more than likely when it's an inanimate object, it's probably an unholy spirit that's doing the influencing. That's something else we looked at on those 3 Thursday nights, right? Why would you wear a sign or a symbol of anything that represents a different superstitious or religious belief? Now, here, it is kind of tough. I'm going to be honest here. It's kind of tough to get in any modern vehicle and drive, because most modern vehicles, the people who were designing the emblems for them, guess where they got them? They all come from ancient pagan symbols. So it's kind of hard to avoid them, but you have to know what they are. You have to know what they are. Look around. What's preventing you from receiving and recognizing the blessings that your Creator wants you to have? Is it your silly superstitions? What would happen? What would happen if you gave those up and you go to givegod90.com and you say, I'm going to start where it says days 1 through 30, and you start at the top and you start doing what it says a little bit at a time each day? What would happen? Is your life going to improve if you actually do the things the Almighty asks you to do? Doesn't have a choice but to improve. Doesn't have a choice but to improve. All of the things that the Almighty says are bad for us are the things we want to do. But it's not that difficult to make those little changes every day, a little bit at a time, so that you are able to have the things that He wants to give you. It's that simple. It's that easy. Believe it or not, it's not a big deal to do it. Even Moses writes, these things are not across the ocean. They're not up in heaven. They're right here, right in front of us. You can do them. It's that simple. And it only takes 90 days to turn your life around. A little bit at a time. Don't try it all at once, because you won't probably succeed. But a little bit at a time. You didn't get where you are, all at one time, did you? Nobody goes to bed. You can't take a person who is like 5'9" and weighs 160 pounds. When they go to bed that night, they're not going to wake up the next morning at 350 pounds, right? It takes overeating a little bit at a time. You're not going to lose all that weight at one time either. Chances are you're not going to turn your life around on a dime either. It takes a little bit at a time. It takes that commitment. Say, if I can commit to this today, and the next day you say, okay, I'm going to commit to this today. And then you commit to something else the next day, and you just keep going. Just like, how do you walk 1,000 miles? One step at a time, right? One step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. As long as you're taking those steps, then that is where your improvement is. More on that next time. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Everybody be blessed, and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Again, don't forget those like buttons and share buttons. We really appreciate all of your support. Until next time, everyone, have a blessed week.